Okay, let's dive in. You shared this really fascinating article with us. Emotionally Intelligent UX to Power the Next Gen of Digital Banking from UXDA.
Mm-hmm.
And as we were digging into it, one thing that really jumped out, for me anyway, was how we feel about our banking apps.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, you probably use your banking app all the time, right? It's quick, you pay bills, move money. Functionally, it does the job.
Sure.
But the source makes this really key point. Does it always feel, genuinely trustworthy? Do you feel like the bank actually has your back?
Right. That disconnect, it's functionally okay, maybe even great, but the feeling, the emotional side isn't there.
That's what the article calls the emotional trust gap.
And the source argues, and this is kind of counterintuitive, that bridging this gap, it's not just one challenge for digital finance. It might be the biggest one right now.
Yeah, it's not about shaving off milliseconds from a transfer anymore. It's about building that real, fundamental trust.
So the mission for this deep dive, really pulling from this source you shared, is to figure out why digital banking often feels. Well, the article says functionally correct but emotionally devoid.
Right. And maybe more importantly, how these financial institutions can actually build that trust.
So we're going to pull out the key insights,
Yeah.
look at the steps, and maybe some of those surprising ideas they float near the end.
Okay, so let's unpack this emotional trust gap first. The source is pretty clear on this. Digital is great for speed, for efficiency, no doubt. But it really struggles to replicate that human touch, the reassurance you might get walking into a branch.
And there are numbers on this, which I found interesting. You flagged that Accenture study.
Yeah, it mentioned 66% of U.S. consumers still like knowing a branch is nearby.
Wow, okay.
And for complex stuff, like real problems, 71% still head to the branch. That's huge.
It makes intuitive sense, though, doesn't it? Financial decisions, they carry weight emotionally.
Totally. You're worried about security, privacy, maybe losing money, making a mistake.
And if the app feels cold or confusing or just impersonal, it just makes those anxieties worse. The buttons might work, but you feel kind of uncertain.
And that uncertainty, that's friction. The article points out that brands often underestimate how vital simple things are, like empathetic communication, transparency, just reassurance when things feel tricky.
Yeah, a generic error message when you're trying to do something important just doesn't cut it. It makes you more anxious.
Exactly. And the research backs this up, too. Deloitte finding trust and empathy drive loyalty more than just features.
More than features, okay.
And Accenture saying that lack of emotional connection, it tanks loyalty. So, bottom line, how customers feel using the service is critical, especially with their money.
Because finance is complex for most people.
Right.
We're not all experts.
Not at all. People crave clarity, guidance. They want to feel supported, not just look at raw data. Ignoring that leads to frustration, feeling lost, maybe even distrust.
And then they start looking elsewhere.
Precisely. For somewhere that makes them feel safer, more confident.
So the big takeaway here, bridging this emotional trust gap with really human-centric UX. That's the key differentiator now.
It's not just about a quick visual refresh. It's got to be deeper, a strategic thing.
Which brings us nicely to the case for really focusing UX on trust in banking.
Right. I mean, most banks know UX is important now, at least on some level.
As they talk about it.
But there's a difference between, tweaking the interface and truly embedding trust building into the whole strategy.
And you could argue the stakes in banking are just higher, aren't they? Trust is everything.
It's the foundation. If a traditional bank doesn't nail this, they're leaving the door wide open for fintechs. Many of those were built focusing on UX and approachability from day one.
So when UX is strategic and it's focused on trust, what are the benefits? The source lists quite a few.
Yeah, they're significant. Better customer acquisition, better retention, because people stick around when they feel secure and satisfied.
Makes sense.
It reduces support costs. Less confusion means fewer calls, fewer errors. And it boosts revenue. Deeper engagement, people trust you more, maybe they explore other products, more organic cross-selling.
And it creates a real competitive advantage, right?
Yeah.
Something harder to copy than just features.
Exactly. The source really hits this hard. In finance, where emotional well-being and trust are so central, this isn't a nice to have, it's foundational.
It's about addressing those anxieties, being transparent, making people feel confident.
The article you sent lays out this really useful framework. 3 stages of UX maturity that banks tend to go through.
Okay, let's walk through that. Stage 1, basic UX adoption. What's it look like?
This is often the starting point. Maybe someone says the app looks dated, it needs a refresh.
Right.
The focus is really surface level, updating colors, logos, maybe tweaking the layout a bit, often a one-off project with an agency.
So mostly cosmetic.
Yeah.
Like putting lipstick on a pig, maybe?
Well, maybe not that bad, but yeah, primarily cosmetic. There's minimal deep user research happening. They're not really digging into the emotional pain points.
And the pitfalls.
Yeah.
If you only focus on the look.
You miss the big stuff. You don't understand the full customer journey, especially the emotional parts. And it's really hard to measure if it actually improved trust or satisfaction long term.
The source had an example, right? App looks nice, but...
Yeah, it looks slick, cool icons, whatever. But trying to actually do something complex, like register or figure out a fee or just navigate, still confusing, still frustrating.
So the user doesn't feel any better about it, even if it looks nicer.
Exactly. Trust is still fragile.
Okay, so that's stage 1. Moving up to stage 2. Systematic UX design. What changes here?
This is where the organization realizes, okay, just design isn't enough. We need to be more methodical.
More structure.
Yes. They start investing in ongoing processes. Routine usability testing becomes a thing. They collect and analyze feedback systematically, not just complaints, but real insights.
Okay.
You start seeing more collaboration, UX working more closely with product, IT, maybe even marketing, compliance, and they start building consistent design systems.
So they're actually using data to improve things, not just guessing.
Right. Data starts driving decisions, improving navigation based on how people actually use it, clarifying content because testing showed it was confusing, fixing workflows that cause errors. And those design systems, they create consistency, which itself helps build trust. Fewer jarring changes between sections or platforms.
The source had an example for this too, didn't it? The check deposit.
Yeah, great example. Bank analyzes feedback, sees the mobile check deposit is causing errors, people are abandoning it, instructions are unclear, so they redesign it based on user testing, make the steps clearer, more intuitive, and then they track it. Abandonment drops, satisfaction goes up.
Because they fixed the root cause of the frustration.
Exactly. Not just the surface appearance.
Okay, makes sense. So that leads to the top tier, stage 3, strategic UX integration. Sounds like the holy grail.
Pretty much. This is where UX isn't just a team or a process, it's like part of the company's DNA.
Baked in everywhere.
Baked into the culture, the strategy, product development, across all touch points, digital, physical, everything. It needs strong buy-in from the top. Real investment.
And collaboration must be seamless at this stage.
Totally. Feedback loops are constant, allowing quick iteration. Design, risk, compliance, product, tech, they're all working together from the start.
The impact must be huge.
Transformational, according to the source. Brands at this stage are seen as innovators. They're transparent, empathetic. They carve out a market position based on reliability and genuinely caring about the customer. That's hard to copy.
Innovation becomes customer-led then, addressing real needs, practical and emotional.
Exactly. Leads to high retention, people advocating for the brand. The source mentioned a global bank embedding UX specialists everywhere.
Right, working alongside risk and compliance. So trust is considered from day one.
And that Emirates NBD case study they worked on with UXDA, that showed real business results. 50% jump in mobile engagement, big boost in satisfaction. That's the payoff.
Okay, getting from stage 1, the cosmetic stuff, to stage 3, this deep integration, that's a massive leap. How does the source say companies actually make that shift? What are the steps?
Yeah, it's definitely not trivial. It takes deliberate effort, cultural change. The absolute first thing the source stresses is executive buy-in and advocacy.
Got to come from the top.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Without leadership championing it, investing in it, it just won't happen on a large scale. And their suggested next step: get executives to watch user testing.
Really? Sit in on sessions?
Yeah. See the struggles firsthand. See where poor UX kills trust. The source says that's incredibly powerful for creating internal advocates.
That makes so much sense. Okay, what's next? Deep user research.
Crucial. And it needs to go beyond just surveys or basic analytics. They talk about ethnographic research, observing people in their actual context, deeper usability testing.
To really get at the why behind the behavior and the feelings.
Precisely. Uncover those emotional needs, the practical pain points, and then this is key, integrate those findings directly into the product roadmap. Keep trust building central.
Then, integrate the UX approach throughout the organization. not just in one silo.
Right. Embed UX people in the key teams, mobile, lending, whatever it is. So they're part of the daily conversation, guiding decisions, bringing that user perspective constantly.
Maybe start with outside experts, then build internal leads.
That's what the source suggests. Foster that cross-functional collaboration.
Number 4, develop a robust design system. Why is this so important for trust?
Consistency. A unified visual language, interaction patterns across all your channels, web, mobile, ATMs, maybe even branch interfaces. It creates familiarity. It feels reliable.
Inconsistency feels messy, unprofessional maybe, erodes trust.
Exactly. So craft clear guidelines, build reusable components, makes development faster too, but the trust aspect is key.
And UX isn't a one-time fix. Needs a continuous feedback loop.
Definitely. The market changes, user expectations evolve, you need regular cycles, maybe monthly, quarterly, to review data, feedback, metrics.
And tweak things.
Yeah.
Especially if you see trust issues or confusion.
Yes, be ready to adjust quickly, keep pace.
And the last one, super important banking. Align compliance and risk with UX.
Yes. The potential clash. Regulations are essential, obviously.
Can't avoid them.
But if compliance is just tacked on at the end, you often get these clunky, confusing, trust-damaging experiences, like walls of legal text nobody reads.
Right.
The source argues strongly involve compliance and risk early, during ideation. Design flows that meet the rules but are also clear, simple, and build confidence.
Turn a potential negative into a positive reinforcement of security.
Exactly. Make compliance part of building trust, not an obstacle to it.
So when banks manage to do all this, implement these shifts, reach that strategic maturity focused on trust, what are the big picture results again, just to recap?
Well, it's really the sum of all those parts. You get much higher customer loyalty, real brand advocacy, people recommend you.
Word of mouth.
Yeah. Which leads to better revenue, lower costs. People use digital more, call support less. Cross-selling feels natural because the trust is there.
And innovation gets faster.
Because the processes are in place. Testing, iterating, it's more agile.
And confidence and security and compliance actually goes up.
Yes, because it's integrated smartly. It's clear, not just bolted on. And the ultimate outcome, the source stresses, is real differentiation. That culture of empathy, reliability, that's incredibly hard for competitors to just copy.
So the final word from the source seems to be, the future runs on trust, not just speed.
Pretty much. It's a big undertaking, this transformation, organization-wide.
But the rewards are profound. Resilient brand, happy customers, efficiency, and that crucial edge where trust matters most.
Exactly. Now, the article finishes with some really cool, kind of unconventional ideas, these dopamine banking strategies, challenging the norms.
Okay, I love this part. It gets into some counterintuitive thinking. First one, embrace simplicity by adding complexity. That sounds wrong.
Right. Totally counterintuitive. The usual problem is apps feel cluttered, overwhelming. So the standard fix is simplify, remove stuff.
Cut features.
Yeah. But this idea says add complexity, but do it structurally. Use progressive disclosure. Reveal information and features gradually as the user needs them or chooses to explore deeper. So you add structure, which is complexity, but the initial view is simple, less overwhelming.
Ah, okay. Like a clean desktop, but the files are organized in folders you can open.
Perfect analogy. The source compared it to a library complex organization, but simple to navigate because things are layered logically.
Got it. Manages complexity to create ease of use. What's next? Prioritize emotional design over functionality. Again, feels backward.
Right.
Function first.
That's the standard thinking. Make it work reliably, make it fast. This says shift the focus deliberately towards the emotional side.
How do you design for emotion in banking? Make people feel happy about their balance.
Maybe not always happy, but you can incorporate elements that evoke positive feelings. The source mentions Aaron Walter's work interfaces that build positive connections, create stronger relationships.
So, like, celebrating milestones.
Exactly. Hit a savings goal, pay off a loan, celebrate it in the app. Little animations, positive messages. It makes routine or even stressful tasks feel more rewarding, more human.
I like that. Acknowledges the journey. Okay, this next one really got me. Leverage friction to enhance security. Friction is the enemy of good UX, isn't it?
That's the common wisdom. Reduce friction everywhere. But the source argues, wait a minute, too little friction can undermine security, or at least the feeling of security.
So add friction back in, deliberately.
Yes, justified friction at key moments. Think about sending a large amount of money. An extra verification step, That's friction.
But it makes you feel safer.
Exactly. You appreciate it because you understand why it's there. Same with identity verification when opening an account, KYC, AML stuff. It adds steps, but people get it's for protection.
The key is explaining why, though.
Absolutely. Transparency turns necessary friction into a reassurance, not an annoyance. Smart friction builds confidence.
Okay. What about designing for micro moments?
So many banking apps try to be the everything app. Do it all in one place.
The Swiss Army knife approach.
Right. This counterintuitive idea says focus design energy on those super brief interactions. The micro moments where someone just needs one specific thing fast.
Like checking my balance in the grocery line.
Exactly that. Or making that quick transfer you always make. Identify those high-frequency, quick-hit tasks and optimize them relentlessly for speed and ease. Don't try to make the whole app like that, just those key moments.
Optimize for how people really use it sometimes. Quick in, quick out.
Spot on. And the last one, use gamification to build financial literacy. Financial education stuff in apps is often
So boring, like reading a textbook.
right. So the counterintuitive idea is make it a game. Apply game mechanics points, challenges, progress bars, rewards.
Make learning about budgeting feel less like homework.
Exactly. The source used the Duolingo comparison for languages. Turn learning into something engaging, rewarding, maybe even fun. It encourages building good habits because it doesn't feel like a chore.
These are really interesting shifts in thinking, moving beyond just function.
They really are, and they point to where differentiation lies now. Functional parity is getting common. Understanding the human psychology, feelings, motivations, security needs, that's the edge.
So pulling this all together from our deep dive into this UXDA article,
Yeah.
the absolute core message is trust. It's not just nice to have in digital banking, it's fundamental.
It's the bedrock, and building it needs that strategic, empathetic UX approach. It's way more than just aesthetics or speed.
It's about tackling user anxieties head on, being transparent, and maybe even using some of those clever counterintuitive ways to make banking feel secure, maybe even rewarding.
It's a big shift, no doubt. Needs that top-down commitment, that cultural change we talked about.
But the source makes a really strong case that the payoff is huge. A resilient brand, loyal customers, efficiency, that trust-based competitive advantage.
Absolutely worth the effort. So given everything the source argues about emotional connection and trust being maybe more vital than just features, here's a final thought for you, drawing from this material.
Okay.
How might this focus on feeling, on security, on that genuine connection? How might that change your expectations when you interact with other sensitive digital services? Think about healthcare apps or online identity tools, things like that.
What makes you feel genuinely looked after in those digital spaces beyond just the basic function? Something to chew on. Thanks for exploring this deep dive with us.